am Brooke Erdman here with MeetRx, success stories and notable interviews. And today I'm very excited to be speaking with Sally Fallon, the notable writer, author, and and farmer, and who has brought to many people across the world the importance of raw dairy and of good nutrition for children and for women of childbearing age, and
Yes.
many other things.
And then for older women too.
And for older women too. Good. Thank you, Sally, for joining me. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Well, gosh, I have so many questions I would love to talk to you about. Well, let's just get started with the beginning of children and animal fats.
Well, I was very fortunate. I grew up in a family that ate real food. My mother was a wonderful cook, and my parents traveled a lot. So when they'd come back from a trip to Spain or France or whatever, she'd cook these things that they ate. And so we really had, I would say, for growing up in the 50s and 60s, we had a very good diet. She always used butter, never margarine, and it was pretty much everything cooked. But we did have breakfast cereals. We had pasteurized milk, and we never ate liver or organ meats. So I grew up fairly healthy, but health problems were kind of showing up in me, fatigue and allergies, headaches, things like that. I was a student in France, and when I was in France, the food where I was going to school there was so bad, it was so awful, that I would go down the street and to the cafe, and it was at the cafe that I ate for the first time in my life what the French call terrine. And it's basically pate with liver in it and lots of fat. It's like cold, fatty meatloaf with liver in it. And I tasted this terrine, and it was like I'd gone to heaven. My body said, oh, this is what you've been waiting for. And I really just lived on terrine in France for the whole 6 months that I was there. I could not get enough of it. So it really perked up my health. And I didn't know why. I just knew that this tasted really good. So anyway, I came home, I got married, started having children, and I discovered Weston Price's book. And I was already someone who loved to cook, and I just incorporated his principles. He kind of validated what I was doing. I was feeding my kids lots of whole milk, cream, butter, eggs. I snuck liver into their diets. And they grew up really healthy and high functioning and smart. So the other big watershed for me was I was probably in my late 20s, and I went to a party, and somebody was serving granola at the party, and I'd never eaten granola before. I always ate oatmeal, and but this stuff was so delicious. It was really crunchy and had molasses in it and stuff. So I came home and started making granola. Now, granola is really a naked grain. It's not cooked. It's not soaked. Just baked a little bit. And I got really sick. I got huge digestive problems. My stomach would hurt so bad that I'd have to lie down for several hours during the day. And I didn't put two and two together, that it was this granola that was indigestible. And I had started writing Nourishing Traditions, and I thought, I'm going to put my granola recipe in there. And I got talking to a man named Jacques Delongre, who produces the healthy sea salt. And he told me about a book in French, which I found and ordered, and it talked about grains in there and how hard they were to digest and how they needed to be a sourdough or soaked or whatever. And the light went on. I thought, I am eating all this granola and I can't digest it. So I immediately stopped, and within 2 weeks, all those problems had gone away. So it was a real lesson to me about food preparation. As you know, I'm not against grains, but the grains have to be prepared right, or they will give you a lot of problems. So it was those two things. I think the terrain kind of got me started on the nutrient-dense foods, and then this lesson about grains that I personally went through.
Clicking, always clicking with.
Yeah, so those are the two things that in my food history that
That's
really.
great, with direct experience.
Yes,
Showing
yes.
the way.
Yeah.
When did it become really clear to you that it was very important to find raw milk, raw dairy, as opposed to pasteurized dairy?
I suspect that I had raw dairy as a child. I'm taller than my siblings. I'm taller than my parents. My parents lived in Dayton, Ohio, and Young's Dairy was down the road. And I just suspect that I got raw dairy as a child. But I started getting interested in raw dairy when I had trouble breastfeeding one of my children, and I had a book with this formula recipe made from raw milk. So I went out and found the raw milk and gave it to my children, and they were very happy on it. So then we were living in Washington, D.C. I found a farmer who was producing raw milk out in Pennsylvania, and we set up this delivery thing where he was delivering to our garage, and that's when I started drinking raw milk. So it wasn't until much later, but it's just wonderful, delicious food.
Did you see any immediate changes or results with that, or?
Yeah, I saw a decline in allergies. It was really good for my allergies.
Just allergies in general across the board?
Pollen allergies, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And do you feel the same way with raw cheeses? Is that a...
Yes, raw cheese is also wonderful food. You're missing the whey proteins, which are very good for detoxification. Whey proteins have a lot of glutathione in them, so you're not getting that part of it. But cheese is a really healthy, sustaining food. And so finally, 10 years ago, my husband today and I bought a farm in southern Maryland. So we produce raw dairy, raw milk, raw cheese, and whey-fed pork and beef and chicken.
Oh, that's great. And whey-fed pork, that's great.
Yes.
I know that pigs love dairy.
Yeah, they do.
So I just have a quick little question about yogurt. Since yogurt is heated, would you still consider that a raw dairy product?
One of the many interesting things I got to do in my life was live in Iran when I was in high school. I was an exchange student in Iran, and the yogurt there really was interesting to me because it was a beverage. It wasn't something you ate with a spoon. You drank it. It was also very salty. It's called dach. And it was raw yogurt. So I think originally yogurt is a raw fermented milk.
So it's like maybe a buttermilk? Or
Yeah. It's very sour. But it was smooth. It wasn't like buttermilk with all the little bits in it. I think to get it thick, you do have to heat it. Now, the culturing, of course, kind of can heal a certain amount of the heating.
Mm-hmm. Can add to.
Yeah, it can help restore some of the things destroyed by the heat.
So I think the kefir is a little different.
Kefir is really a good one because it's made with, you don't have to heat the milk. It's very easy to make.
Nice.
And now it's interesting, my ancestors were Swiss, and I just love the taste of sweet raw milk. And I don't very much like the taste of sour milk. So I don't really like yogurt very much. I use yogurt in soaking grains and things like that. But
nice.
Mm-hmm.
I have so many things to talk to you about, so many directions to go, but I think I'm going to select about women and women's health through their whole timeline. Certainly as children, ideally they're breastfed and they're given a rich fatty diet. But as young women
they'll be slim if they're given a fatty diet.
Yes. Nice. Mm-hmm. Yes. And stay away from rampant carbohydrates and
yes.
processed foods. But when they're young women of childbearing age, what are some of the particular things that maybe they can do for themselves to stay strong if they decide that they're going to bear children?
This is the real focus of all my work, and the Weston A. Price Foundation is producing healthy children. And there's a real formula for doing this, and it works. I can tell you that it works. And it's a nutrient-dense diet. We advocate really high nutrient density for at least 6 months before conception for both the man and the woman. Now, if the woman has been a vegetarian, if she's eaten a lot of soy foods, that kind of thing, we recommend doing this diet for 2 years before you conceive. And we have very grateful members who did it for 2 years and had beautiful, healthy children. So what does this diet consist of? It consists in raw dairy products every day, a liver a couple times a week, cod liver oil, 2 egg yolks a day, lots of butter, and of course, plenty of meat, lamb, beef, chicken with the skin, a bone broth, and of course, you can have fruits and vegetables, soaked grains. It's a varied diet. It's an interesting diet. But you need to include these nutrient-dense foods, especially the liver. And that diet continues through pregnancy and through breastfeeding. And then that's the diet you give to your growing child. You gradually wean them to raw milk. The first solid foods are pureed liver and egg yolks. And then you eventually add other foods. So I did write a book on this. It's called The Nourishing Traditions Book of Baby and Child Care, along with Tom Cowan. And, the children who've grown up on this diet are just wonderful children. They have beautiful faces. They're attractive. They have straight teeth. Don't get cavities. I have 4 grandsons and not a single cavity because they're on this kind of diet. They are smart. They're happy. They grow tall. It's a formula and it works. So we're really happy to see the results in these beautiful children. Okay, now you're getting older and you come to menopause. And menopause is where your bad habits catch up with you, especially if you've been a big coffee drinker or tea drinker. It's depleting of the adrenal glands, very hard on the adrenal glands. And in menopause, the adrenal glands have to take up for the ovaries. The ovaries are no longer producing estrogen, so the adrenal glands start to do that, if they can. If they're not too stressed or tired or whatever, then your adrenal glands start producing estrogen for you. Also, women do gain weight when they go through menopause. It's completely normal. It happens in traditional cultures. The weight gain helps you have stronger bones. And the fat around the middle, it's almost like you gain an organ in your midriff, and that produces estrogen as well. So it's very calming, happy producing estrogen. And that's, of course, you don't want to gain too much weight when you go through menopause, but I always say 2 dress sizes. 2 dress sizes.
So the adrenal glands start to produce estrogen for you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And they also start to produce more testosterone because you're going into a different phase of life. You're going from being a mother to a wise woman, and you take on the leadership roles in your culture, in your society, in your community. And that's more of a testosterone-driven role.
And God knows life is tough, and getting old is tough enough. You need you need testosterone.
You do. But you still want to be feminine, and that's where the estrogen comes in.
So the hormones are not depleted. Then they're actually still.
You're still producing all these hormones. It's just not your ovaries doing it.
Nice.
But the women I know who've really struggled in menopause with hot flashes and headaches and not being able to sleep and feeling terrible are the women who drank a lot of coffee, ate a lot of sweets, had a kind of.
And maybe just didn't even eat a nutrient-dense diet.
Right.
Because I'm seeing differences in the carnivore community and in myself with including, if one hasn't been eating a lot of animal foods, including so many more animal foods in the diet.
Yes. really does help. Yeah, because they're more nutrient dense. And I also think the dairy foods become more important as you grow older, simply because now your bones are starting to deteriorate a little bit, and the dairy foods keep those bones nice and strong. They're also very easy to digest, and I think as we get older, we want softer food, and especially when we really get into old age, get into your 90s, and if you're over 100, the dairy foods are really great foods, sustaining foods.
And I think that digestion's a little bit harder as we get.
Yes, the digestive fires wane, and you need to pay more attention to the digestibility of your foods as you grow older. No question. Young people can eat anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother them. But as we get older, we have to be more careful.
Let's talk more about dairy, because I know in the carnivore community, quite a few people eschew dairy, thinking that they don't tolerate it or can't tolerate it, and maybe,
and probably they can't. I mean, it may be very true that they can't.
Yeah, but maybe the distinction is really raw dairy versus pasteurized.
Well, I always say if you I'm allergic to dairy, so I always say, okay, try raw dairy. And you start slow. You start with, 2 tablespoons of raw milk in the morning, and warm, not cold, and build up from there, and just see. Because a lot of what people call milk allergies are pasteurization intolerances.
And so does the raw milk maybe inoculate the intestine again? Or
yes. I mean, it's designed to create good flora in the intestines. Yeah. It also seals the gut. It's designed to create a healthy gut. So if you can tolerate raw dairy, I certainly would recommend it.
And with healing the gut, since gut permeability is such a huge issue these days,
it is, yes.
And bone broth is such an helpful thing to have.
So, that's also very good as you grow older, is the bone broth. It keeps you flexible, keeps your tendons and joints healthy. Yeah.
It seems to me that in the quest for high fat diets, especially when we supposedly didn't have mammoths to hunt down anymore.
Yeah.
Dairy probably would have just been a really important biohack that humans created. So they always have a very high fatty, nutrient dense protein food.
Well, they had food all the time.
Yes, and food.
And I think the people who had herds, they didn't fast. They didn't have to fast. They just always had food. Whereas the people who hunted had to have a kind of metabolism that could deal with fasting. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because they had to go for long periods of time without eating.
Yes. Yeah. And both groups of people, but probably the herders would have fermented dairy.
Yes. Well, what I was saying in the earlier interview, they fermented meat also.
Yeah.
Every culture in the world, without exception, had fermented foods.
Would you call blood pudding a fermented food?
No, that's like a sausage. No, but salami is a fermented food.
Because blood pudding, it is just like a quick sausage, but it does have this quality of curing and tempering. So I'm just
I didn't know that. Well, that may be true. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Usually, when they made these kinds of things, they put some kind of grain in it, and it was the grain that fermented. To make them sour, to produce lactic acid. So I know in Asia they put rice in the sausage, they put oats in the haggis, they put breadcrumbs in the bangers, that kind of thing. They put rice in the boudin sausage, and they put oats in blood sausage. So maybe they could ferment it.
On the earlier interview, you would you like to explain that again about when a hunt went down and they had this.
Oh yeah, it was called a Pate. It was so they killed an animal. They took the stomach, which is very large in these ruminant animals. And they had their stone knives. They shred up the tender meat into little pieces. They put that in there. The organ meats, they especially talked about the lungs being shredded up. They put all the fat in, and then they poured the blood in, and they tied it up and smoked it over the fire. And the man who described this, Samuel Hearn, yeah, it was a great big thing, like a haggis or whatever. He said it was just delicious. It was salty because of the blood, and it tasted good. And it was tender, too. It wasn't something you had to really chew on.
Nice. Sounds delicious. I know that I find blood sausage to be really delicious.
I love blood sausage, too, yeah.
And beautiful color.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And all the organs were in there.
Yes.
Combination of organs in there.
Yes, right.
When you spoke early on about terrines, I think of terrines as a type of pate.
Yes, but it's like a coarse pate.
Yes, because it brings in lots of different chopped meat within a collagen-rich kind of broth.
A gelatin type of thing. Yes. Uh-huh.
So it has like
perfect nutrition. Yeah.
Perfect nutrition, and it can keep
a long time.
Mm-hmm. And you can use things that aren't the fancy steaks or cuts. Right. Do you make terrines at home a lot?
I don't. I have made them, and I have to admit that I do buy them instead. I'm just so busy. I do make a chicken liver pate frequently, and that's a pureed type of pate.
And I love liver. I love liver, and myself. What are some of your favorite organs to eat?
Well, it's mostly liver, I would have to say. I like liver. Yeah.
You mentioned the lungs. That's an organ I've never.
Yeah, I've never eaten lungs. I know that they make sausage out of the lungs in Italy. I've never eaten them. Yeah. Kidneys I like. I have a number of really nice recipes for kidneys and nourishing traditions. I used to be able to get sweetbreads.
Yeah.
And they are delicious. They're like chicken nuggets. Yeah. Yeah.
They are delicious. I can still find them. I can still source them here in Northern California.
Oh, you can. And then brain, I know living in Iran, we ate brain once a week.
How did they prepare it?
It was like scrambled eggs. In fact, they cooked it with eggs. Yeah. I was kind of a picky eater, but it tasted all right to me. So
nice. Yeah. I remember something about, I think it's in Nourishing Traditions, about the preparation of pork, and that you were mentioning that almost every region cures or brines, does some special preparation for pork.
No, that was not really in Nourishing Traditions. I didn't know that when I wrote Nourishing Traditions, but I had a Chinese friend who said, Sally, in China, we have rules about pork, and we cut it up fine, we soak it in vinegar first, and then we cook it. So we had a gal do some blood tests on many of us before and after eating pork prepared in various ways. And if you just ate a plain pork chop, your blood would develop rouleau, and your blood would look really bad. But if you marinated the pork chop in vinegar or lemon juice or whatever and then cooked it, that didn't happen. So there's something about pork that requires a special preparation. And then we did bacon, and thank goodness, bacon was okay.
I was so fascinated. Fascinated about reading that.
Yeah, that was published in our journal.
Yeah.
And prosciutto ham was fine. Any kind of cured meat was fine.
Well, I started to think about all the different regions, of the world and how they prepare pork, and it's so often bacon, ham, sausage.
Yeah. Yes.
Or like the Filipinos maybe make a vinegar dish. There's so many or just a barbecue that you're brining it before.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that's what I do now for all the pork. I started eating pork more because of this study, and it was so interesting for us what we found. And thank goodness about the bacon.
There's something to those traditional ways of of
Yeah,
cooking. There's a
yeah,
reason for that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was really fascinating.
So I'm an omnivore, but I do pay a lot of attention to how digestible my food is. All our grains are soaked or sourdough. Uh, we cook our vegetables. We do a lot of broth for digestibility. Lots of soups. So I mean, I do eat pretty much everything. Including meat, of course.
Do you eat much fruit too?
Not a lot of fruit, and we do cook our fruit, which I think you might find interesting. There have been studies showing that the raw pectin is very irritating to the digestive tract.
Uh-huh.
So we cook our apples, we do stewed fruit. I just did some baked peaches, which were absolutely delicious. And I do find I do better if the fruit is cooked.
Very nice. Yeah, I just have some. It's peach season,
Yeah.
and I've been carnivore, pretty simple meat eater for the past 2 years. But I have decided to fully embrace the peaches that are on the property.
Well, I would cook the peaches with the meat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, would take your marinated pork or put the peaches in the bacon pan,
Yeah.
and I
Yes,
think you'll find. I would, if you've been a carnivore all this time, I would actually not recommend eating a raw peach. I think they should be cooked.
yeah, grilled peaches can be delicious.
Yes,
I'll
there you go.
do some of that. Um, Well, I asked a few friends that I was, requested to ask you
Mhm,
about pregnancy diet, which I'm so glad you started off with
mhm,
explaining
mhm.
that. Um, I think more so than ever before with the popularity of vegan diets, women
And the way they're being pushed to young women, that is just,
and
it's
green
criminal.
smoothies
Yeah,
and all those things. It is
yeah,
criminal, yeah,
yeah,
and babies and children.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, Yes, that I think that's yeah, I see that all around me
Yeah.
actually. Um, thank you so much. I know that you have a schedule and we're
Yeah,
coming up
thank you
for
for
half
having
hour.
me.
I
Yeah.
could talk to you for the whole day. Um, thank you so much, Sally.
Well, I have a blog, nourishingtraditions.com, and I do blogs on all different subjects. I'm just working up my next blog. And I've turned my last two blogs, which were on coronavirus, into a book called The Contagion Myth. I wrote it with Tom Cowan, and you can pre-order it right now on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And there's a lot about diet in there to protect yourself from what I think is really causing this illness, which was electromagnetic radiation, especially 5G. And you can protect yourself with your diet. And saturated fats are key to protecting yourself from uh, this, I call it electrosmog, which we have everywhere.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that, and I think in particular, maybe stearic acid. In particular, the ruminant.
Yes, I would think so. Yes. Uh-huh.
Very good
Sure.
to hear that you're
Yeah.
working on a book on that.
Yeah.
And
So
you're
it's
still
something.
really active in the foundation.
Yes, I'm still running the foundation. We
You're
have a conference coming up in Atlanta at the end of November, and it's going to be a real live conference, no masks, no social distancing.
oh,
We've been
nice.
promised that we don't have to do that. So,
And the foundation is international, as I
yes,
understand.
yes,
So
yeah,
people from all nations can sort of.
absolutely. We have chapters all over the world.
Good deal. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and carry on your beautiful life.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for helping a lot of us.
Thank you.
Okay, Sally.
Okay,
Bye now.
okay. Bye.